Welcome to an episode of Let's Eat Orlando with Amy Drew and Biggie. This is episode 1, I guess, is what we'll call it.
We had
And
0.
yeah, we did 0. We've done 0, so hopefully you've enjoyed that one. And then now, welcome to episode 1. Today, I want to talk about the real Orlando. Amy Drew,
Very exciting.
I got to
Really
see
exciting.
yeah, some pretty crazy awesome stuff. Super excited to see. I don't know if you had the opportunity, but somebody feed Phil, a Netflix series, season 7 episode 6 featured are the City Beautiful, and the episode was called The Real Orlando, and Amy Drew is in it. And I kind of think that she had played a big part in all of this, so I kind of want to chat with her.
It takes a village. I played a part in it.
Well, and that's what we're going to talk. We're going to talk a little bit about. And I know that I know you've written about it in the Sentinel. I know you've had,
Please go read it. Go read my story.
I know you've you had like a kind of like a Q&A, eat Q&A at Crocante, one of the locations that they did, that Phil went to. But so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about it. So can you kind of give people a little bit of a backstory of like how you and Phil actually met?
Phil and I met because some people, I suppose an agency maybe, contacted me months ahead of his book appearance, which I did not know he was on a book tour. I know Phil, I don't know Phil, but I've watched the show is what I mean. And so when they reached out to me and they said, hey, he's going to be in your city, would you be the moderator? I was like, oh my gosh, of course. That was so exciting. Even though I had never done anything like this in my life and was terrified, I was like, I want to meet Phil and I want to be able to showcase the city. So yeah, of course I would do it. And so we met, 15 minutes or maybe a little bit longer than that before I was out in front of the whole packed house at the Plaza Live, which was terrifying, but amazing. Amazing.
So I have a question about that. I know that's not what the shows that we're going to talk about, but I am kind of curious. When you do something like that, like one of those, like a project like that, where you're going and you're talking with him, do they give you kind of questions to kind of ask, or are they expecting you to kind of lead the conversation? How did that kind of work?
I can only speak for this.
Yeah.
Because I've never done this before. But for this occasion, they basically presented me with a list of questions that would be okay. So I'm pretty sure Phil, he is an entertainer. He had, I'm sure, lots of stories prepared. So it was just, here's this massive list of questions. You randomly choose whatever is interesting to you, and Phil will answer them. So,
that's fun.
I think that there's a level, my guess, and this is speculation, is that Phil has answers to all these questions. And then based on who he's interacting with and where he is, there could be variation in the answers. But he has like more than half of what he's going to say kind of wrote, to some degree. And then you have a conversation around it. So it was just up to me to pick whatever I felt like asking him. And I didn't have to tell them beforehand.
You just got to pick since you had it. So once that happened, obviously I know you and I have talked and you guys kind of like hit it off. So
we did. It was nice.
So when that happened, was there a time where you're like, hey, you should eat at Orlando, or did he approach you to ask you about places in Orlando, or how did that dialogue kind of go?
He and his nephew, who was with him, came to introduce themselves. I was in the dressing room, making air quotes for those of you not watching, at the Plaza Live, which also kind of looks like the room from Hostel. It's not a fancy room. They have a full-length mirror though and a chair, and that was really all that mattered. So they came in, they had a bag full of peanut butter cups from some or other fancy chocolate shop, and we ate some dark chocolate peanut butter cups. And he just told me a little bit about what he'd done in Orlando so far. And he just asked me a lot of questions about what was out there. And, amen. That's one of the few things that I'm good at answering is what restaurants are there in Orlando. And he asked different questions about different things. And I guess, enough was piqued that he was like, hey, we have a few hours tomorrow morning. Would you show us around a little bit? But I mean, the next day was Sunday and it was morning. So there was a limit and he only had so much time. and he knew what area he was going to be close to. So it's not like I could shuttle him from Mount Dora to Sanford to Kissimmee and hit the whole thing. It was like, I'm going to have to do
Yeah.
this one and done and show him enough. And hopefully, he would like what he saw
And so
and tasted.
when you went on a Sunday, so basically that was like kind of like, oh crap, I
Well,
gotta
I
like,
had Yankees tickets. I had no plans to do this. I was going to the home opener for spring training the next day. So I had no plans to do this.
and then you were like, oh crap, I gotta like not only Rolodex, figure out who's, and then I'm assuming when you did this was not, we're not talking yet, like this is just like preliminary, just going out to eat. This is not like Phil's coming to record a show. It was just
No, no,
you,
no,
it was
no. There
just
was
you and
no
Phil eating in
and
Orlando.
Jeremy and his
And
nephew. It
Jeremy.
was me, my boyfriend, and Phil and his nephew. And we went and ate at places.
And then when you ate at places, how many of the places, and obviously I'm all about name dropping good places that you recommended, but I'm just kind of curious, how many places did you guys end up going to during those 3 hours?
All of the places that we went to during those 3 hours were featured on the show.
That's what I figured.
Which
And
was cool. And then I gave him an added list, and other people that he was in contact with had given him lists, and I'm sure that there were probably overlapping
of course.
suggestions, my list
Yeah.
versus other people's lists. I have no idea how many
Yeah.
lists he had, but I know that he had more than just mine. It was not just me.
No. Yeah, but I will listen. I once again, I know you're very humble, but I know for a fact, and I will say that you helped and were very instrumental in this whole aspect because of the fact, and obviously Phil was, because he
That's very
realized,
kind. It
you
takes
know,
a village.
it does
It
take a
takes a
village.
village.
It does take a village, but the mere fact that, and that was one of the big things I was curious about, was like how many of the places, and then I was also kind of curious how many places were there any, like, so, and then we can kind of, if you want, we can kind of mention some of the places that you guys went to in case they haven't seen the episode, and if there's anything that you kind of want to add, from that we maybe didn't see on TV. But I was kind of curious of, was there any place that you kind of were like, ooh, I really wish I would have been able to. It just did not work out when I originally brought
It was
them.
Sunday morning. There were plenty of places that I, would have loved to have taken him, but they're not open on Sunday morning.
Correct.
And they were not. So there were, I knew that I had to work within the scope of what he offered. It was no question that I was going to, pass on the Yankees game. There was no question that I was going to take Phil around if that was what he asked me to do. There was no question. I did. The prospect of Orlando being on Somebody Feed Phil was not taken lightly. That was an exciting thing. And if I could help to do anything to help that happen, I was going to do it. We went to East End Market. We started there. I had warned late at night. I had gotten in touch with Matt Hinckley. I told him what was up and that we were coming. So he was there. He was the only person that I peeped at East End Market. And then while we met Matt and while he was prepping some things for us to eat, and I showed him around East End Market. I showed him Tonda's stall. I showed him Gideon's, which of course had a line,
already,
out the door. And he was looking at that. And I took him, he saw the brunch hordes gathering outside of Domu. I took him upstairs and I showed him the neighbors, even though it was closed. We looked in the door and I kind of told him about the Domu Lab concept and everything up there. And then we went downstairs, sat in the courtyard, and Matt brought us some sandwiches and things for Phil to try.
That's awesome that you that it kind of lined up that way. And I think it's awesome, and like I said, it's super instrumental, the fact that like you got to show him things that we want people in Orlando, like the foodies of Orlando, that like love and talk about, like, hey, there's more than the theme park stuff. Like, you were able to show him areas, and I will tell you that, like, watching that episode, I got emotional watching that episode numerous times, and it was like, and at one point I was like, why am I crying, and a lot of it was like things like I got excited when I saw you on TV, because I always think that, like, you're always in the background, like, singing everyone's praises and being like that spotlight for everyone. And so I loved the fact that you were on, and that you were being showcased. I loved that how they did it, where it was like they had different people all throughout the show, and so it was like you had a great representation of Orlando and the great people of Orlando. And so I thought like everything from like Ricky Lee, like it was just so great to be able to see, Anna on there, and it just kind of like, and then like even the charity side with like with the Black Bee Honey. There was just, it was just such a great episode to be able to do that. I think it was amazing to kind of be able to see when it came down to filming. Like, how long of a filming is that? Like, especially like during your segment, like when you were
Oh my
eating
gosh,
at East End, like how long were you guys there
we
for?
shot for such a long time, and it was like the tiniest
Right?
bit.
It's
Because
just,
I mean, yeah, it was the tiniest bit because you can't, they need a lot. It's just, it's the video version of what I do. I
yeah.
I do interviews that are sometimes an hour long, and I have to leave so much good stuff on the cutting room floor because you can't include it all, and that's the same for them, and I'm sure it was the same everywhere that they shot. But I had lunch with Phil the other day. He was in town with his daughter
On
and her
Friday,
boyfriend
their book.
for their children's book, which is really cool. And
What's
so
the
he and I
children's
had,
book's name? We might as well plug it in and
it
keep it
is
on this.
called Just Try It.
Yep.
Which is such a cool idea because I feel this way about adults. There's nothing to me that turns me off more than somebody who just says, I don't like that. And you say to them, and they're like 30, and you're like, well, did you ever try it? No. I'm like, when you're 5, I'll give you a pass. But I even want 5-year-olds to try it. But when you're 40 and you're saying that, no bueno.
No, I
We
agree.
got to try things.
I agree.
So I think it's just a phenomenal concept to have this book. Like, just try it for
Can
kids.
I ask where you guys went to lunch? Did you guys go to one of the places that you were on that was on the show featured, or did you go
No,
somewhere
we went
different?
to Sato,
Okay.
which is now open for lunch again on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's mix it up. So, and it was very weird because his timing again was like every single place when he wanted to go to lunch was like in there between lunch and dinner period and closed. So, but then things got shifted and we were able to make it work. So, but he had a very little bit of time. He had like 45 minutes to eat. So we went to Sato and we had fun, and it was great. But what I was leading up to in all this was that he said that he felt like the Orlando episode was the most surprising episode of season 7. He and everybody that I know who was involved with the show is very happy with it.
Yeah, I can't see anyone. I mean, obviously, I'll preface it. You'll always find someone that's going to complain or someone that's going to say something, but I think it was an amazing, a really just a great representation of our city and like all the different elements of food, and just the different cultures and the melting of what we provide as a city, and I think
100%.
that
Look, you could do a season on Orlando. You could. If they did that, they could do a season on Orlando. I would be the first one to champion that. But
Amy
you
Drew, the
only get
host.
one episode. You only get one episode, and everything can't be in it.
Correct.
But I'm glad that what was in it, and that people will come here and they'll try these businesses and they'll go to visit Matt or Trina or Marie or anybody in the episode. And when they're there, they'll say, hey, where do you go for X? And they'll get more recommendations from people who are part of the real Orlando to the rest of Orlando. And I just think it's great,
And you made a friend with Phil. You're friends with Phil.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think it's
nice.
it's definitely been one of those things where I think that like I said, it's a great showcase. I think it'll be I think people will appreciate it and love it. I think it's interesting because when you watch the different episodes of that season, it's like all these places around the world, and then there's like Orlando.
I know, and that's why he's right. It was the most surprising, and it should be noted just that his brother Richard is wonderful. Their other producers were wonderful. Everybody on the crew, including amazing local people, the local sound guys who are from Orlando. Everybody just involved with the production was just a joy to work with, and it was just really cool to
Do
be a
you
part of
know
it.
how long it took them? I mean, I know you weren't there filming with him all the day, but do you have any idea of how long the length of time it was for him to be able to produce? Was it like a week's worth of
They were
time
here
in
for about,
Orlando?
if I remember correctly, because we were in touch, they
Yeah.
were here for basically the better part of a week, at least 5 days they were
Yeah.
here, but I don't know exactly.
I was
It
gonna
was a
say,
week, the better part of a week.
because when I talked to Casey from Band vs. Food, and they did Orlando, that's kind of how long it was. It was like 4 to 5 days they were in town for
I would
the
say that it
film,
was,
and
I can't guarantee you, but I
yeah,
would say they were here for at least 5 days, possibly a couple more.
okay, that's awesome.
I can't
What
remember.
what was your most memorable? What was your most memorable thing that obviously when during filming or just this whole experience? What do you think has been the most memorable thing?
That's a tough one. I haven't really thought about the answer to that. I think just knowing that Orlando is going to be on the maps of people where it wasn't before is the coolest thing ever. That there are people, because there's always going to be people who come to Disney and Universal. There's always going to be room for that. And there's always going to be a segment of those people who want to step outside the parks. But I think that this will make more of them want to do that. And it might actually even bring people who are not really that interested in the parks to come here and try the food. We have, Christina from Go Epicurista
Yeah,
said the other day something along the lines of, this is something that hits really hard for those of us in the community who have been championing the Orlando food scene for 10 or 15 years. And I'm included in that. I've only been
of
at the
course.
Sentinel for just about 5, but I was I was doing it for other
Yeah,
venues before that. And we all have known what a tremendous gathering storm this city was and how much talent there was here. And to finally see people on the world stage recognizing that, Beard and Michelin and Phil, and other places. Food Network's been here for a while. I don't want to miss them. I don't want
yeah,
to
they've been great.
dismiss them either. They've been here.
Yeah.
But just to finally see that recognition starting to come for the people who have been beating the drum for Orlando for that long is pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, that's 100% the reason why
And
it's
there's
like,
a lot of people. There's a lot of people who,
yeah,
I think that we get insular, you, me, and people who are more foodie oriented. But there are a lot of people in this city who don't even realize what a good food scene we have. And I
correct.
hope that this wakes them up to it also.
Correct. Yeah. No, and I think that's kind of one of the things where, and we'll talk about it on future episodes, like the foodie awards and things like that, like where it kind of does give some perspective of some of these places, even though, sometimes
You and I live and breathe it every day. So we forget that not everybody is like immersed in it the way we are.
Correct. And I think that's kind of the big thing. I mean, there's definitely a lot of people that you can follow. And I think that this was a great opportunity to be able to kind of see. I don't know if you want to spend a few minutes on some of the places that, that Phil got to go visit. I know that, like, just to name a few, and so that way we can put on the show notes as well. Crocante, Hinckley's, Gideon's, La Femme de
Sampaguita.
Yep,
Cooking
Sampaguitas,
with Kim.
7 Bites,
7 Bites.
Banh Mi Boys,
Banh Mi Boy at Tianhong Market.
yep,
Yes.
Capra,
Kappa.
Kappa, sorry. And then he also, which I thought was great, the fact that he did Airboat Ride, which is a very Central Florida. Like I've taken friends that lived in Chicago to Airboat Ride just because I was like, hey, let's do something that even a local tourist would want to do. Kennedy Space Center. I love the segment with the black bee honey as well. As a matter of fact, my wife actually ended up being in that. She was actually at a farmer's market recently and they were there, and so she bought one of their sample packs of their honey and stuff like that. So I mean, it definitely was a good little snapshot, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast, is because we want to give more snapshots and more props and love to different food segments around the city, and I think that this is This was a great, what a great way to kind of start off with, like, as our first episode, but also a great way to be able to kind of showcase, kind of one of those things where people can watch it and be like, wow, I didn't know about this. Or, I mean, it'd be kind of hard not to, because I think everyone talked about it in Orlando, and you guys did a really good job, because I saw like everything from, like, follow us and look at all the places you can eat at, and then like the fact that you guys did got to eat at Crocante and have the Q&A. How was that event, by the way? How did that turn out go? And
That was so nice. So many subscribers to the Sentinel showed up. Tonda showed up from La Femme de
yeah,
Fromage, and so it was sort of impromptu, but she was able to answer some questions that people had too, and talk a little bit about her experience. That was super cool. Thank you, Tonda. It's really awesome. It was really fun, and I think it was a great deal. They got a lot of food. They got to taste, I don't know if it was certainly most, if not all, of the things that Phil had. Full, huge slabs of porchetta,
did he have the
chicharron,
octopus? Did they have the octopus
octopus
tacos?
tacos. Yep, all of it.
That
All
looked
of it.
amazing. Was there a common question?
I barely ate, but Yamuel sent me home with a little doggy bag, which was
Oh,
nice.
oh, that's good. Well, as a true Spanish person would. What was there a common question? What was like a common question that you guys kind of got a lot of? Was there something that was common or very popular with that?
Um, no, I don't think anything particularly surprising was asked. It was all very nice. People were curious about Phil, about a lot of the things you asked. How did I end up, meeting him, um, and all that stuff. Basically the same thing, which you can, again, if you go to the Sentinel and you read the story, pretty much the whole story is in there, or a lot
Yeah.
of it.
Everything kind of goes. This is kind of like a little extra that you can kind of now, if you read this, you're listening to this, it also hopefully will intrigue you to go onto the Sentinel and actually read it, and be able to do that. And then at the same time, it'll all kind of connect, and it'll make you appreciate that much more when you're listening and watching the episode on Netflix. I know I watched it. I think I watched it, like, it premiered on a Friday, and I was pretty much on Friday morning. As soon as everyone left, I was sat and watched it.
It took me a while. I have problems watching myself, listening to myself. I'm not good at that. So
Well, I definitely love it. I think this is a good stopping point. Unless you got some additional points that you want to talk about this episode, about Somebody Feed Phil and the real Orlando. And
nope. And I would just say, if anybody out here is listening to this who loves the Orlando food scene, tell people.
Yeah.
Just keep telling people how good it is. Keep telling them your favorite spot for a burger, your favorite spot for banh mi, your favorite spot for ramen, whatever it is. Because there's a lot of places, there are a lot of options. It's hard to pick just one, and maybe showcase some of the things that you love that weren't on the show.
Yeah.
And give those places some love too.
Correct. Yeah, definitely always keep showing. If you like a place, how about, I would say, the tip I would say is, if you love a place or you like a place and you're like, wow, this place is really good, or the owner's great, or the food is good, like, tell people about it. If you don't like it, you guess what? Don't say anything about it. Just keep it to yourself.
Someone might like it.
Yeah, because someone may like it, and then there's no reason to give. It's better to just give the compliment to the ones you like. If you don't like it, don't say anything nice. Don't you don't have anything nice to say? Don't say anything at all. Well, that's our episode for this week for you to check out. Obviously subscribe, tell your friends, give Amy Drew a follow. You'll see it on the show notes. You'll see my contact information as well. Make sure to give me a follow, but definitely make sure to tell your friends about Let's Eat Orlando. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.